Hi everyone, I'm Shelly from There's No Place Like Home at redheadmom8.wordpress.com. Today I wanted to share with you some tips for something that really seems to start rearing its ugly head right about this time of year. So today I wanted to talk to you about how to deal with homeschool burnout. A few days ago, somebody messaged me and asked me if I had any tips on dealing with symptoms of homeschool burnout. And honestly, it couldn't have come at a better time for me because that very day I was feeling completely exhausted and just not wanting to do much of anything. And I realized after reading this question that it very likely was burnout that I was dealing with too. And with me, it might not have been, just homeschool burnout. It might have been life burnout in general. But the fact is that if you do have life burnout, you are bound to get homeschool burnout as well. So I thought that I would share with you some things that I have learned about homeschool burnout, because this is something that really, really touches me near and dear to my heart. Because if you haven't seen this video, way back when I first started homeschooling, we homeschooled for about 2 years, and I just tried to do too much too soon. I did a lot of stuff wrong. I was too strict. I tried too hard to replicate school. And so after those first 2 years, I completely burned out and I was unprepared. I didn't know what homeschool burnout was. I didn't really have a homeschool community. So my very first reaction was to put my kids back in school. And so, yeah, my kids ended up back in school for 2 years while I dealt with this. And so at first, when I sent my kids back to school, I was kind of relieved. I had peace and quiet, and it felt like I didn't have that responsibility anymore. But, not too much longer later, I started realizing that my kids were coming home from school. They were fighting all the time. I was having to deal with different kinds of homework from kids, like they would be fighting over who would be getting help with their homework first. All kinds of papers to sign all the time, just permission slips, fundraisers, having to go to the school 3 times a day to go, because my kids, I had some go in the morning, then some went in the afternoon, then they all came home later on in the afternoon. So it was like morning, then lunchtime, then around 3 o'clock, I would have to go back again. And, I just realized that I missed having my kids home with me. Their attitudes were not very good. I was starting to deal with some issues with the school that I talk about often here, where they usurp your parental responsibility. My kids would get sick and the school would question me about it, tell me that my kids are missing too much school when the reason they were getting sick was because they were getting sick from other kids in school, and then they would bring it home and share it around. My kids were getting lice because the school wouldn't notify parents when the other kids were getting lice. So then they would bring that home. And so about 2 years later, I said, that's it. This is the worst decision that I've ever made. But even though all of those different circumstances that we were dealing with were awful, the fact that I missed my kids and wanted them home with me, it literally was leaving a pit in my stomach. And so that's why I really wanted to share this video with you today, because I know how tempting it can be to send your kids back to school when you're starting to feel exhausted. And we'll go over some symptoms of burnout if you're not really sure what it is. But, I just want to encourage you that there are things that you can do. And, don't send your kids back to school on a whim just because you feel like you can't handle this anymore. Because what you need to remember is that if you address these issues, it's a temporary problem. And very often sending your kids back to school is a permanent solution, unless you do like I did and pull them back out again. And it can very often have really negative repercussions, not just on your kids, but on your entire family. So with that being said, what are the symptoms of homeschool burnout? Well, some symptoms of homeschool burnout, and I might miss some, but this is, just the basic symptoms: a lack of enthusiasm for doing school with your kids, if not downright dread. There might be days where you literally don't even feel like getting out of bed, and the last thing that you want to be doing with your kids is school. Another symptom is an inability to focus while you are doing school with your kids. As your kids are doing work or as you're helping them, you just keep wanting them to get done, get done, get done. And you kind of want to push, push, push because you just don't want to be doing it. Another symptom is a lack of patience. And there is no homeschool mom who has perfect patience. So don't ever think that if you're impatient with your kids, it means automatically that you have burnout. I mean a complete lack of patience, like you feel like you are at the end of your rope. That is a good chance that you are suffering from homeschool burnout. And what I talked about in the beginning of this video, just feeling completely exhausted, like you really don't want to do anything, is another good indicator that you've just got too much stuff going on, and very likely you really do need to do something, change something about your homeschool. So now there are several times of the year that homeschool burnout seems to hit the biggest amount of homeschooling parents. And honestly, it can happen any time of the year. But the times that you most commonly hear of people suffering from homeschool burnout are right around this time of year. We're in November. We are operating on daylight savings time, or did it end? I can never tell the difference between the two. All I know is that it's getting dark really early now, and that can really affect you as the mom, as the dad, as the kid. On top of that, you've got, depending on where you live, colder weather. So when you have this dark, dreary weather coming in, very often that can bring just feelings of tiredness and depression. And, it's very, very common. It's not just homeschooling parents that feel this, but homeschooling parents are the ones that do have that added responsibility of having their kids home with them while they are feeling like this. So yes, that is another reason that you might be feeling it this time of year. Another time, and also it has to do with this time of year too, the holidays are approaching. A lot of times there's a lot of anxiety for some families, all the planning that they have to do, all the things that they have to get done, all the things that they haven't done yet, haven't started yet. These are all starting to make lists in people's brains right now, and that could really be adding to the lack of focus. Another common time of year for burnout to occur is February. February is like a big homeschool burnout month because you figure all of those holidays are over and you're kind of in the middle of really not much going on. You've got, again, depending on where you live, just some really cold, dreary weather. Your kids really can't go outside much anymore because it's way too cold out. So they're always in the house, bickering with one another because they can't, go and stretch out their legs out of doors and get the fresh air. And then, at the last time that I'm going to mention that is very common for homeschool burnout to occur is a lot of times at the end of the school year, because you've been going all year long, and you're just like at that finish line and you can't wait to get it done and get that break. So that is another really common time for people to have burnout. But again, it can happen any time of the year. So what I want to talk to you about, first of all, is how you can avoid homeschool burnout. And I will tell you that there is no way to avoid it 100%. You are very likely to at least one time or another begin to experience this. But if you notice the symptoms ahead of time and if you tackle it earlier, it is so much easier to get rid of it. So one of the biggest ways, actually the biggest way that I have found of avoiding homeschool burnout is operating on a year-round homeschool schedule. Now that could mean that you are homeschooling for a certain amount of time and then having scheduled breaks that are more frequent, or there are some people who homeschool year round and they just take breaks whenever they need them. Now with me, I still have a bit of that type A in me. So I do like to have scheduled breaks. So, we homeschool for 6 weeks and then we take a 1-week break, and then we homeschool for 6 weeks and we take a 1-week break. And then we have 2 6-week breaks, 1 between Thanksgiving and New Year's Day. And then we have another 6-week break, like around the end of May to like around the second week of July. And when you are a homeschooling parent and you know that you've got these 1-week breaks coming up every 6 weeks, it really helps to take a lot of the stress and the anxiety off of you from having, all of these additional things to do other than just taking care of your house and cooking and doing laundry. You've got homeschooling. So when you know that you've got these breaks coming up, it is such a relief. And, I always look at it this way. It's not even just 1-week breaks. It's actually like 9 days, because you've got Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. 9 days you have off every 6 weeks. So I really, really look forward to that. And it helps take the edge off so much, especially when you start to feel, that it's coming on. You can think to yourself, I've only got 1 week left and then I've got a break. So that is really helpful. And again, some people are better with just taking those breaks, whenever they feel they need to. And it really just depends on what type of parent you are, what type of family you are. But yes, year-round homeschooling, I highly recommend that you do it, just because you can take frequent breaks. And another really great way to avoid having homeschool burnout is just to make sure that you have variety in your homeschool. It's good to have a homeschool routine. It's really, really important for a lot of kids. I'm actually going to be making a video about that later on this week, probably. But just because you have a routine doesn't mean that you have to be doing the exact same thing every single day. Do a mixture of different types of activities. Take in different techniques from different homeschool styles, and just, shake things up every day. Yes, keep a basic routine in place, because it's very helpful, especially if you have a larger family, but you don't need to be doing the exact same activities every day, because not only will you as the parent get bored with that, your kids are going to get bored with that too. So now I've talked about the symptoms, and I talked about when it is most common to happen, and I talked about how to avoid it. But now I'm going to talk to you about how to deal with it, how to fight it when you actually do have it. And this is so important. Like I said, if you notice the symptoms early on, nip it in the bud. Take care of it right away, and don't wait until you feel like you absolutely can't handle it anymore and you have to send your kids to school. You don't want to let it get that far. So the first thing that I want to talk to you about is I want you to think to yourself, and this was actually brought up, I think someone left a comment maybe on one of my YouTube posts, and I fully agree with it. If you're feeling this way and you're feeling that urge to send your kids back to school, you have to remember, why are you homeschooling? Go over the whole reason that you started homeschooling in your head. And if you actually mull this over and really concentrate on it, you are far less likely to just send your kids back to school kind of on a whim, just because you're feeling extremely stressed out. So think about that first. Why are you homeschooling? What is the reason that you chose to do this with your kids? It's likely a really important reason, or you wouldn't have been doing it in the first place. Okay, so something else that you can do to fight homeschool burnout once you've already got it is lighten your load for a while. If you are someone who is having like 4 to 5 hour homeschool days, consider, just cutting off some of the what you could even consider to be extras. Maybe even focus on just the 3 R's for a while with your kids. Just focus on language arts and math with them, just so that they can get those foundational skills in, but so that you don't have to worry about having 4 or 5 hours of school every day when you literally feel like you can't even handle another day of homeschooling. So, really consider lightening your load. Or, it doesn't necessarily have to be just doing 3 R's, but, what works best for your family? What are some ways that you could cut things down and make things a little bit more manageable as you are going through this season in your life? And you need to remember, this is a season. It is not going to stay this way forever. And again, this is why I implore you to think twice before putting your kids back in school for something that is temporary. Another way that you can fight this is to try a new homeschooling method. Sometimes the homeschool method that you have been doing for maybe even years, a lot of times they just stop working for your family, or maybe they weren't even a right fit to begin with at all. But before you decide to just put your kids back in school, try a different way of homeschooling. There are so many different approaches, and it can be fun just to read up on the different types of homeschooling for a while. There's a Charlotte Mason approach, which is about living books and doing lots of nature study. There is unschooling, in which you're basically living like there's no such thing as school at all. There are unit studies, which have a lot of hands-on fun activities around one topic of interest that kids of all ages can be doing. And, there are several of other different methods of homeschooling. Those are just a few. But consider that. Think to yourself, maybe I've been approaching this in the wrong way lately, or maybe it just doesn't work for us anymore. And so don't be afraid to change things up, because that might be just what you and your kids need. So if you're feeling in your homeschool burnout time, if it's pretty early on and you think that maybe you just need like a day or two to unwind, have a movie day and don't feel guilty about it. Just put something on that both you and your kids will enjoy. Pop some popcorn, have some hot chocolate or some iced tea, depending on what time of year it is. And, your kids will learn from everything that they're doing. My kids have already learned stuff from SpongeBob, that they've been able to come up to me and tell me things that they learned on that cartoon, of all cartoons. Your kids are going to learn something no matter what they are doing. So yes, by all means, have a movie day. And if you feel like you need it the next day, have 2 movie days in a row. You're not going to regret it, and your body very likely needs it, and your mind. Now, another great way for you to kind of just get out of this burnout feeling of homeschooling, try unschooling for a week or two. Just let your kids do self-directed learning. Take them to the library maybe and have them pick out some books on things that they would like to learn about. And then once you get home, let them have at it. Let them, go on YouTube, under your supervision, of course, to find some neat science experiments that they could do. Or if they maybe find some books at the library on science experiments with like kitchen stuff. Don't do anything like overboard that's going to make you feel even more stressed out. At this point in time, when you are burned out, let your kids do things that they themselves can handle and need minimal supervision for. But yeah, let them follow their interests. Let them read. Let them watch, videos that have to do with the topic that they want to learn about. Let them do hands-on activities. Let them go outside in the yard and play. Let them look for bugs. Let them bird watch. Depending on their age, let them go for walks. This is the perfect time for you to do this. And remember, there are families that unschool all year long, every single year. So you should never feel guilty about unschooling with your kids for a week or two, because it is a very natural way for kids to learn. And, one more thing that I just really want to talk to, the last way to really fight this is, give yourself grace. Allow yourself to take a break. Even if you do need more than a week or two. I recently talked to a family who's going to be taking a month off just because of some outside situations. And that is very often a cause for homeschool burnout as well. When you've got some stressful things going on in your life, that can carry over into your homeschool. So if you feel that you need a longer break than like a week or two, do it. And as you're doing it, depending on how you're feeling, you can still do things with your kids. You can bake with your kids. You can take them on errands with you, take them to the park. You can take them for walks. But that is the beauty of homeschooling, is having the flexibility to take breaks when you need to. And don't be afraid when you have to take a break. Do it. Your homeschool will be better for it, and your kids will thank you in the end. Anyway, that's all that I have for you today. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet and would like to hear more of what I have to say, I would love if you would do that. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave one over on Instagram, because YouTube disables my comments. And if you like my work and would like to check out my Patreon page, I will leave a link in the description box for that as well. And I hope you have a great day.